So good to see you. I want to know who the Whoopers were for Michigan. Go Blue, right? Like, that was a great championship. So I'm Elise. Thank you for the lovely invitation. Stacy, and the lovely introduction, Betsy. And it's a thrill to be back at Vassar, where I spent such amazing years of my life. I'm going to open with a little story. My sophomore year at Vassar, I decided to take a math class, despite a striking ineptitude for anything mathematical. It was a poor idea. It remains the only D I have ever gotten in my entire life. That's still really hard to say. But how was it that despite my interest in coming to Vassar to pursue all the things that my career has been about, political science, humanities, social change systems, that I found myself almost flunking an advanced calculus class? The answer was I was looking for answers. Despite the fact that I had been so excited to come to Vassar from my home state of Texas, I found it overwhelming when I got here. I could do what I want. I could sleep when I wanted, with whoever I wanted. I could eat what I wanted. And the sort of yes attitude that has embodied my entire life was on overdrive. And as much as I delighted in it, I was exhausted by the end of my first year. I was overwhelmed physically, spiritually. I ended up with a bad case of mono, far away from home. And so when I came back sophomore year, I was like, just give me a class where the answers are clear. Turns out, not so much. Are there any math people in the room? Nice. So I ended up my senior year dating a math major, which is when I learned that math is this beautiful, complicated subject where you learn to do things like tie knots in the fourth dimension. Who knew that you could do such a thing? And it wasn't that math was the problem. It was that I was the problem, or my motivations were the problem. Seeking the easy way out in simplicity was not the way to enrich myself and take full advantage of everything that Vassar had to offer. So the good news is the rest of my time, I got no Ds, and I availed myself of so much of what Vassar had to offer. I had professors that challenged me, courses that opened my mind, and friends and memories that have lasted me to this day. In fact, my college roommate, who I dearly love, her daughter is a sophomore here now. Where's Carmen? Where's Carmen? Oh, there she is. Hi, Carmen. And I hope that you all will have that too. So when Vassar called and said, will you come talk to the students, I jumped at the chance because I really do feel, in some ways, I'm a walking poster child for a liberal arts education, which means my career has made no sense at all. I majored in geology, largely because rocks fascinated me, and I wanted a major that kept me outside in the beautiful Hudson Valley as much as possible. I loved it. I took a lot of other classes as well. When I left Vassar, I did what any self-respecting liberal arts major would do, and I spent a year as a ski bum in Vail, Colorado, hiking and skiing and waiting tables. Then I went home to Texas and worked for an organization called Bat Conservation International that looked at bats as keystone species, where I ended up releasing 5 bats in my parents' house the day before we were hosting 100 people for my sister's wedding. But that's the story for another day. From there, Betsy told you some of this. I went to Michigan. I got my advanced degree in resource ecology management. And I ended up there figuring out that for me, I was more interested in how to advocate and activate social change than compile evidence about why it was necessary. So I ended up getting a job at Greenpeace, traveled the world, went to another organization called Rainforest Action Network. Before coming home in 2004, I really lived abroad for a lot of that time. Coming home in 2004 to work for an organization called MoveOn.org. My passion at that point was getting President Bush out of office. I felt like Texas had inflicted that on the nation, and I had a responsibility to correct the record. We failed. Spoiler alert. But that took me to Washington, D.C., where I traversed a number of issue organizations, including Media Matters for America, before landing at NARAL Pro-Choice America and presiding over the fall of Roe and the vacation of, and I don't mean vacation like a trip, I mean the actual vacation of the right to abortion nationwide. Does not sound like a super successful career rate, but wait, we'll get to that. Through it all, I just want to say this out loud, so you guys have permission to say this. I had no plan. I had no plan at all. I really only held two things: an appreciation for the complexity of the world and a drive to follow my curiosity where it took me. And that is what gets instilled in you by coming to a place like Vassar that is so committed to a fulsome liberal arts education. You guys probably know this, but the word liberal comes from the Latin liber, which means, what? But being wrong is amazing. It does not mean book, but library comes from the same term. It means freedom. It actually means freedom. And that is the pursuit of freedom of spirit, freedom of person, is at the heart of a liberal arts education. Freedom can also be terrifying if you have too much of it, and it knows no boundaries. But I would say the things that the liberal arts education focuses on, like critical reading, cogent writing, and the ability to think critically about the world around you, will serve you for a lifetime. I'm no longer young enough to remember a 30-minute speech, so I'm gonna glance down at my cards, just telling you. So while you're here and you build those skills, I encourage you to think about that consciously and seek an interdisciplinary approach, because that's what really matters when you get out into the world. So back to my math class. I had a good reason to crave a simpler world. It's kind of scary out there. How many of you all were How many of you were born in 2004? I tried to do my math. Good, I hit it right. This is my curiosity. I went down this rabbit hole, like what was happening in 2004? We were 3 years away from 9/11. The war on terror was 3 years old. Blackberries were 2 years old, and we were 2 years away from iPhones. In 2004, the worst natural disaster on record happened when a tsunami hit Indonesia and 227,000 people died. Friends aired its last episode. The Red Sox won the World Series for the first time in many, many decades, breaking the curse. Beyonce released her first solo album. J-Lo and Ben Affleck got engaged for the first time. Kevin and Brittany got married. These were complicated times, you guys. And it's only gotten more complicated. I think about the fact that you guys were born in 2004. You've never known a world without war. In 2004 was the 10th COP. Do you guys know what COP is? Conference of Parties. They're the big climate change meetings. At that time, the Earth had warmed 1 degree. We're a little warmer than that now. You were born into a world of immense challenges. And, get back to that BlackBerry iPhone thing, you've never known how not to see it everywhere around the world. When we were growing up, terrible things happened everywhere, but we didn't have to bear witness to it. The technology simply didn't allow it. It really makes you crave simple answers. And unfortunately, the simple answers are often not the best answers. My world changed in 2004 because that's when I came home to work on politics after having worked on international environment and human rights. And I found it very jarring. I found it very confusing. I found it clunky and hard, and you have state governments and the federal governments use all these words that are really confusing that nobody tells you because you're supposed to know what cloture means, and I had to look up cloture. If you don't know what cloture means, don't worry about it, it's not relevant. But they talk in a language. There are 413 people in Congress, and there are 100 senators, and they're not apportioned right, and there are all these technicalities. I found it very, very complicated and confusing. The thing is, I also grew to appreciate the complexity of it and the beauty in the striving for that complexity to amount to more than the sum of its parts. Complexity and complicated get used interchangeably a lot, and they're not actually the same thing. Complexity, many interacting parts, working by simple individual rules that have emergent properties. Many interacting parts, simple individual rules, emergent properties. I'm a naturalist by trade, so ants. An ant can't do anything on its own. Nothing. A single ant will die. Ants together can carry it's like 1,000 times their weight, right? They make some of the most complex civilizations that are known in nature. What about birds? You see a whole bunch of birds in a field. They're all doing their own thing. Someone's squawking, someone's fighting, someone's eating. But then when it's time to fly, what happens? Do they all bump into each other? No, they emerge in this beautiful pattern and lift off into the sky and fly off to lands wherever their curiosity takes them. I'll tell you a story from my own activism. Anyone here identify as an activist? Anyone here participated in a protest ever? So, oh, look at that. I love that. Vassar still has the good old activist spirit. In 1999, I was a part of a protest in Seattle against what was called the World Trade Organization. At the time, this was it still is actually, an organization that creates global trade compacts that we felt like were disproportionately about how to increase corporate power and less about human rights and the environment. It was complicated and complex, let's say it that way. It was what they called the first internet protest. People came from all over the country. We did not have smartphones. We did have radios, like walkie-talkies. It's pretty cool. And the way that protest was organized was in a hub and spoke model, which meant we had a singular goal. We wanted to shut down the meeting. We wanted to show that there was people power and that the delegates would not be able to pass unfettered into the meeting. And we wanted to do so maximizing the chances of impact, minimizing the harm. So we got into little groups. And each group took their piece of the puzzle. And we knew what our piece of the puzzle was, and we trusted that the other groups knew what their piece of the puzzle was. And at dawn, on the day that they called it a ministerial, went to happen, our group went, and we sat down on our little square of concrete that we were responsible for, and everyone else did the same. And nobody got into that meeting that day. Now, lots of people felt lots of different ways about that, and by the way, it didn't come without consequence, right? You push on one piece of the system, the other piece of the system responded. There was lots of tear gas, there were lots of people who went to jail. but it was a beautifully elegant expression of how individuals can come together and express collective power in a really impactful way. But the important piece is, in complex systems, you can't predict the behavior by only looking at one piece of the system. If I had gone to Jasmine and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And she said, "I'm just going to sit down on the street corner," would I have known what was going to happen? I couldn't have possibly predicted what the whole system was going to do. So the point and the beauty of complexity is looking at these systems and seeing patterns. And it is one of the things that has helped me survive the information overload of the modern world, is we bear witness to a lot more than we used to. What are the patterns that are emerging? What are the patterns of oppression? What are the patterns of empowerment? How do we lean into one and diminish the power of the other? All right, so if that's complexity, which I think is sort of the foundational eat your vegetables part of the liberal arts, then what's the dessert? What's the delight? It's curiosity. Curiosity is an unbelievably under-exercised muscle today. We get taught pretty young that curiosity did what? Am I going to date myself? It killed the cat, right? What a terrible message to teach people. It might have made sense when if you wandered away from your little pioneer cottage, you might get eaten by a bear, but certainly not in this culture. In fact, researchers have found out that 4-year-olds on average ask 300 questions a day. Middle schoolers asked 10 questions a day. By high school, most of the questions were, where's the bathroom? And will this be on the test? We are squeezing the delight of curiosity out of young people through standardized education and through tech determinism. You don't have the luxury of going to a library to look up one thing and spending hours finding out something else, because ChatGPT or Google's just going to tell you the answer to your question. It's efficient, it's just not delightful. Innovative people report that someone at some point in their life authorized curiosity to be an intrinsic part of their identity. They identify as a curious individual. The best leaders rank very high on a curiosity scale. They ask open-ended questions. They seek information. They don't just tell people what to do. The Latin root of curiosity, I'm not going to ask, I'm just going to tell because I embarrassed someone accidentally before, is to care. Being curious means you care about other people and the world around you. It is harder and harder to find spaces where curiosity thrives because of instant gratification, of being able to get whatever you want online, because of digital distractions, and because of what my dear friend Eli Pariser termed the filter bubble, because increasingly we're surrounded by people who think like us, algorithms that serve us up, content that reinforces our pre-existing beliefs. It flattens our world. It doesn't enhance it. Curious people are more adaptable, creative, they're more empathetic, and I think that that's going to matter a tremendous amount in the world that you all are inheriting. So what do I do now? Betsy talked a little bit about this. I am a senior fellow at a progressive think tank in Washington, D.C., and I look at young people's relationship to democracy. And I see some troubling things. A global survey showed that 40% of young people are okay with military rule. 35% actually are okay with leaders who don't adhere to rules of elections and don't consult their governing bodies. And here at home in the US, we're seeing about 40% right now of young people, and by that I actually mean 18 to 29-year-olds, saying that they're probably not going to vote or they're likely to vote for a third-party candidate. I find this troubling. I also find it understandable. And when I sit and talk with young people, one of the things I hear the most is the world is in chaos, the problems we're facing are urgent and existential, and when we can really get into it, what I hear often about climate change is, if I had an autocrat who I knew would focus on the things that I find most urgent, wouldn't it be a more efficient way to solve these problems? And the answer is, it might be. It might be more efficient. But what are the trade-offs? What if that autocrat all of a sudden becomes someone who is against human rights, against queer people, against women? Because that happens a lot around the world. Are those trade-offs that we are willing to make because we are seeking simple answers? They're not trade-offs that I'm willing to make, but it's because I actually believe that if we can hold this twin balance of embracing complexity, which, by the way, as it relates to democracy, is the piece of the puzzle that embodies the values that I care about, inclusiveness and representation. That comes from complexity, right? Resilience. Complex systems are more resilient. You push on this one, there's give over here. And, by the way, accountability, right? It's slow, it's plodding, which, by the way, was a feature, not a bug, of democracy, but it is, at the end of the day, accountable. As far as curiosity goes, you gotta have that too. You've gotta have an informed citizenry to be able to actually engage in pluralistic, multiracial democracy. You have to have healthy public discourse, which means asking more open-ended questions, listening, having the back and forth that actually creates an emergent and innovative answer and solutions. And you have to have conditions that encourage civic engagement, which requires curiosity about what comes next, what comes tomorrow, what comes the next day, the next year, 10 years from now. That is where we get the emergence of a better world. So I guess the upshot is, get a job, don't get a job. Know what you're gonna do, don't know what you're gonna do. I don't really think it matters as long as you commit to this idea that from whatever perch, business, science, politics, academia, you are gonna maintain these twin flames of curiosity and complexity. Because if you do that, you're gonna leave the place better than you found it. And that's all we can ask for in our lives and in making the world a better place. Thanks. I think we have time for some questions, and I know Stacey told me to tell you there are microphones on either aisle. If you want to ask a question, you can come to the microphone, and I'm happy to take a shot at it. But if you wouldn't mind, just because this is like my thing, say your name before you ask a question. And if you don't ask questions, I'm going to feel like it was super boring. I am totally cool with you sitting there, but I think they wanted you to go to the mic so everyone can hear you. Yeah. Yes, sorry. If you are able to stand and go to the mic, please, and if you are not, please raise your hand and someone will bring a mic to you.
think this is the perfect height. Hi, first of all, thank you so much for the talk. My question is, what's a risk that you've taken that you don't regret taking it?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Tell me your name.
I'm Elta, like Delta without the D.
Elsa?
Elta with a T.
Elta.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
love that. Okay. A risk that I have taken that I don't regret taking. There are really, really so many of them. It is, I will pick one. I think moving to Washington, D.C. It was not, I like never sought to go to Washington, D.C. I sort of thought Washington, D.C. was where good activism went to die, honestly. I was afraid of becoming part of the problem. In fact, the reason I went to Washington, D.C., quite honestly, because I am a brutally honest person, is because I had gone through a terrible breakup and I needed a change of scenery. So I said I would go to Washington, D.C. when I was working for MoveOn.org for a year. And then I was gonna go back home. I was living in San Francisco at the time where I wanted to live the rest of my days because it was activist heaven. And it was quite honestly terrifying. Both to my self-identity, I had always been an outsider, not someone who sought to influence things from the inside, and because I didn't know anyone, I had no friends, and I had a whole support system in San Francisco, and it changed my life. Not because DC is this preeminent place, which is the only place you can make change, I actually don't believe that at all, but because I really learned the complexity of what it means to realize progress. I really learned that everything has its role in the system, and I had played this particular role of demanding progress from a particular perch, but when I went there, I was like, oh, there are all of these different component pieces, and you have to figure out how to line them up, and sometimes you actually get partial progress, and you have to embrace that and celebrate it and own it as something that you did in order to make more progress possible. I also happened to meet my partner that first year in Washington, D.C., which never would have happened if I hadn't taken the risk. And I promised my children, who are 9 years old, they're twins, that they really wanted me to mention them in the speech. So I would never have my children, Leonidas and Rosalie, if I had not gone to Washington, D.C. But it was a terrifying thing, and not just because of the geographic move and the unfamiliarity of the people, but because it challenged my identity as an activist.
Hi, Chris Deutsch, class of 97. So I do have a question, but I'd rather hear from the students. So I'm going to encourage the students. Somebody in this room, or a couple people, do have a question here. So this is a good opportunity to build that confidence muscle and come up and ask a question, because she is an awesome speaker and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so I would recommend coming up. So I'll ask a quick question while people come up and ask. I live in Chicago. I've gotten very frustrated with local politics, so I'm now forced to get involved, and I'm worried about my head exploding. So I'd love some advice on how what advice you'd have for a layman.
I hear you. Chicago is its own unique brand of politics, so good on you. So I want to answer that in a couple ways, because I think anything hard is incredibly frustrating. And I think particularly when it comes to politics and entrenched politics, which Chicago is almost the definition of entrenched politics, there's a little bit of a last person standing mentality. It's like whoever shouts the loudest and outweights everyone else. And so there is a patience game, but there's also there's a organizing game, right? Like when I get frustrated with the political machine, which I have engaged with a lot, then I actually seek different kinds of communities to build, to replenish me, but also to rebuild put fuel in the engine to go back in. But the other point I want to make, Chris, because I think it's really important, is one of the things that I think we have done is conflate civic engagement with politics. And it's not the same thing. And you don't have to get engaged in politics to build the muscle of democracy. I'm not talking about Democrats, I'm talking about democracy, right? So Betsy introduced one of my hats that I wear is Senior Advisor to Rewiring America. One of the reasons I love it is because we focus on community residential transformation to clean energy systems. It's less expensive, it makes health better, we just installed a heat pump in a woman's house who hadn't had hot water for 3 months. And it's intimate. I think that the clean energy revolution, when you get down to residential, not commercial buildings, is the opportunity for civic revitalization. You go door to door and you talk to your neighbors. And that is actually the blood vessels of democracy. I didn't talk about this so much, but authoritarians, and I write about this a lot in my book, authoritarians are quite aware that they don't have the majority on their side. Period. Full stop. They know that better than anyone. What they depend on is mass disengagement because people don't believe the system works. So whether you want to bang your head against the political machine, God bless you, I do it too. It has its own sort of like ups and downs, valleys, peaks and valleys. Or whether you want to do neighborhood organizing and mutual aid, that is all the conditions under which democracy thrives. And if you really care about, in this country, a pretty scary authoritarian right not having control of our lives, pick one, do it. If you get frustrated, go do something else for a little while and remind yourself that it takes all kinds, and together we can really make a difference.
Hi, thank you so much for the lovely talk, and I have to say, I love your boots, they're amazing. My name is Eva, and my question for you is, you mentioned both working in the sciences and working in the science fields, and your time as an advocate. How do you feel that your time in the science fields has helped you prepare for that career in advocacy, and what has that disparity helped you with, and what has it harmed you in doing? Thank you.
That is an excellent question. Thank you for asking it. So I think that there's so many, so I'm just going to pick two. My work in science is literally the thing that taught me complexity, right? I always say, even though I never worked in hard science again after my graduate school, I brought that systems approach, that ecosystem approach to everything I did, because everything is a system. Politics is a system, civil society is a system, the marketplace, business is a system, right? So I could see patterns that was taught to me down to my physics class of how do you look at the component pieces of something and then the emergent properties of them. I think one of the other things that it taught me is that data and evidence matters, and using it to build a case is really important. The thing that I stumbled on for a while is thinking that would be enough. If I just show them the data and the evidence, they'll stop polluting the river, they'll stop spewing greenhouse gases into the sky. Turns out, not so much, right? And so I had to move beyond that to other parts of the system, which is asking questions, inviting people's interest. You notice when I talked about transforming homes to clean energy, 90% of the time, people aren't letting us in because they care about climate change, right? This is just like, it's not that they don't, it's just that they care about other things more, like, I can't pay more, and I don't want my kids to have asthma from the gas burning in the house. So meeting people where they're at, weaving stories that connect to higher order values right, is critical to have the data actually manifest itself in the world. We have such a long line over here and no line over here. Go ahead. Ulysses. That is what autocorrect changes my name to when I plug it in. Go ahead.
Oh, well, that's good. Well, nice to formally introduce myself after I've taken over your autocorrect. I do have a question regarding your discussion about complexity as well as curiosity. How would you recommend that we grow an appreciation for both within our communities and encourage people to both appreciate complexity and understand that simple answers are more difficult, but, simple answers are often less correct, and that we need to appreciate complexity as well as encourage people to actually engage with their curiosity that much more?
Yeah. It's a great question, and I think there are more disincentives in culture today than there are incentives, which is part of what makes me worried about, again, little d democracy. I think it starts with me. For me, it started like, read something I wouldn't normally read, right? And I spend an enormous amount of time on Rumble and in some of the in 4chan and 8chan. I don't actually recommend that. You don't have to go that far. But, sometimes it was just like seeking out a center-right source and like really sitting with the information that, and not even getting into conversation with anyone yet, just like being curious enough to seek it out, having the conversation in my own head, but inevitably that led me to other places. I think that we are all very raw. We have all come through unprecedented times. Like, we will be grappling with the effects of this pandemic for so long. We have no idea how it's affected us yet. On top of that, like, the just sheer brutality of the images on television every single day, certainly in Israel and Palestine, but all over the world, right? It's like, that's to say nothing of what's going on in other, like Pakistan just forcibly moved people. Like, there's just, the Rohingya. Like, it's just, we are so raw that anytime anyone challenges us, it's like it scrapes against our soul. And so there's a part of it that's like, build the muscle and do that by interacting with people and just breathing when someone says something that doesn't actually sit with where you started. And then ask an open-ended question, right? That's the thing. Instead of being like, but no, I know this is true. Even if you do, even if you feel that way, ask an open-ended question. It doesn't mean you're giving up your values. It doesn't mean your perspective doesn't matter. But that sort of connection and do it on social media, right? You're gonna get, I of all people have gotten more hate on social media, both from the left and the right, by the way, because if you put yourself out there, if you're willing to model challenging your own assumptions and other people's assumptions, you're gonna get it. But in that noise, you're gonna find a signal. You're gonna find someone you connect with who helps you evolve your own thinking. And when you start intimately, because it's scary to start publicly, but when you are confident that you have the resilience, model it publicly. Because a lot of people are looking for it. A lot of people are looking for ways to do that, because we know what we're doing now is not working.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go over here and then we'll go back.
Hello, I'm Kayla. And first off, I just really want to thank you specifically for just the reshaping of the view of complexity, because as you mentioned, like, it definitely is construed as a more negative thing, so it's really interesting to rethink that. But I do want to ask how you kind of reckon with the negative aspects of complexity, either from like a mental health standpoint, in the sense that like it must be a little bit disheartening when things take so many steps to kind of get forward, and even also in like the keeping the ball rolling standpoint, where it's like you're doing all of these steps and it's like, it feels like the end isn't really in sight. Like, how do you keep going and kind of keep your spirits up?
Yeah, Michaela?
Just Kayla.
Kayla.
I say like I'm Kayla, and people think it's Michaela often.
That's sans serif is my enemy because I'm ILY, but if you don't have a serif, it looks like LL. So I'm familiar. It's a great question, and I'm really glad you asked it because I did present this as a wholly positive thing, and I think in its highest manifestation, complexity is a positive thing, and without it, we cannot create conditions for evolutionary change. But it is also can be used as an excuse for inaction, right? Well, you're never going to like understand the whole system. There's always going to be another viewpoint. It's you gotta keep going and going and going before you make a decision. That's one, right? That's one manifestation, negative manifestation of complexity. And the other is, to your point, it wears on you. It's exhausting, right? It's simply exhausting. And change feels slow in the face of overwhelming problems. So just acknowledging that that's true. How do I deal with it? It's the way I said at the end. I mean, I've been at this for a long time. I've had more, I mean, literally I spent 8 years of my life trying to do nothing, well, that's not true, but trying to protect the right to abortion, make the connection between abortion and democracy, freedom and control, oppression and agency. And I kind of watched it crumble in front of my eyes. So I am familiar with the toll that it takes on mental health. Take a break, right? Like I really encourage it. Being in it is a lifetime pursuit. Democracy, justice, sustainability, environmental integrity, none of it is a destination. This has been going on for millennium before we got here. It's going to be going on, if we're lucky, for millennium after we leave this earth. So recognize yourself as an individual in a complex system. No one of us is ever going to do it all, and it ain't going to happen in our lifetime. And give yourself permission to take a break, enjoy, refuel your engine, whatever that means to you, and admit when you're kind of burnt out and do something else for a little while, because this is going to be here forever. I know nobody likes to hear that, but I'm pretty sure it's true.
Hi, thank you so much for your great talk. My name's Marjorie, or Maggie. I'm really interested in reproductive rights and accessible healthcare, but similar to Kayla, it can seem just really hopeless at times, especially being like young people with uteruses and feeling like your rights are being taken away. So I'm wondering where in our like society do you like gain your hope from and your will to keep going at what you do and in all your social justice endeavors?
So I eschew simplicity, but I'm going to give you a simple answer. I don't know. I figured out at a relatively young age that this point that I made at the end, that like we kind of only get two choices because the third choice is disengagement, and disengagement is throwing the game to a side that I actually don't think should win. So it's like, which again, back to Kayla's question, that doesn't mean every day, all day, no matter what, because that is just a recipe for burnout. So it's also like I have been really privileged to engage in a tremendous amount of joyful resistance, which, by the way, happens a lot in not privileged societies, societies that have been oppressed and marginalized for a lot of their existence, whether it was, frontline communities I was working with in Indonesia, whose entire culture and lives were being robbed from them by a logging industry, or, cancer. I did a lot of work in Cancer Alley here in that stretch in Louisiana, where African American communities have been suffering first under slavery and then under environmental oppression for a very long time. And I found that it was like this weird sort of white middle class thing that was like, we don't deserve to engage in joy until everything is solved. Like, you just don't have that luxury if you live on the edge all the time, and that joyful resistance and joyful resilience was really, really educational to me. And in fact, like, it is claiming the victories, no matter how incremental, taking joy and spreading joy, and the possibility of a betterment, of progress, it's a practice like meditation, but it's a practice that actually allows us to go on and persist. This is the human condition. This is not something that's just happening in 2024, right? And so I have learned from my elders who have been at it a lot longer than me. I also take a lot of joy in my family and my friends, and like, I like to swim in rivers, and I let myself do that, you know? So that's, but the thing I will say about abortion right now, can I say shitty? It's shitty what's happened. I mean, it really is heartbreaking. Like, I literally had a panic attack I was in some crazy small airport when the news came down. And there are communities of resistance that were preparing for this. There is a massive movement to get people with uteruses the care that they need, laws be damned. So they can't break our will. They can't break our capacity and desire to take care of one another. And so we win.
Thank you so much.
We're okay? Okay. Yes.
Hi, I'm Harrison. So we all spent our time here learning about curiosity and complication and complexity. What if the people that we're engaging with can't see the complications, and what if they're jaded and can't see the joy and curiosity? Where do we go from there?
That's a great question, Harrison. And I've never considered it my job to convince everyone. I have considered it my job to do two things: to create common cause with the, I'll use abortion because that was a big thing, right? Like, we always knew that the vast majority of people actually support legal right to abortion because it's endemic to freedom and bodily autonomy, but we were not engaging sufficient numbers of them through politics to be able to win. That's uncontestable now. 8 out of 8 states have passed ballot measures that protect abortion. Ohio, Kentucky, Kansas, places where, like, defy what the conservatives will tell you was possible just 2 years ago. So the other 20%, I don't know, keep your door open, because somebody's going to have an epiphany somewhere, and we really want to welcome anyone who's changing. But there are enough people out there who believe in universal humanism, believe in agency, in purpose, in freedom from oppression, even if they manifest it in different ways, that those are the ones I try and focus on. The other thing I say, and this is really humbling, and I've learned it the hard way sometimes, is I'm not always right. Don't tell my husband that. And so that's where the curiosity comes in, is like, I'm going to go 3-4 rounds with someone who is engaging in good faith and saying something worth listening to, even if I don't agree with it, because I want to evolve my thinking, my consciousness. I want to believe that it is in partnership and community that I find better solutions, which is really hard because we all have egos, and I got a big one, So you don't need everyone, but you need the people who are engaging in good faith that you're learning from, and that's the rest. It's okay to politely walk away from someone who's not, you're not having constructive engagement and they're being disrespectful. It's okay. It's okay to walk away from them.
Hi, my name is Karina, and thank you again for your wonderful speech. Your career has spanned so many different interesting areas and fields, and I'm sure a lot of that has been unexpected. My question is, how do you welcome or encourage surprise professionally, or encourage exploration when you're approaching your career?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, and I'm not going to tell you that, like, my periods of unemployment weren't scary. I felt like I was never going to get a job. Everyone's like, when you're unemployed, like, to the extent that's fiscally possible, it's like, you're gonna get a job eventually, so enjoy it. Like, that's the hardest thing to do. Like, it's hard. You gotta pay your bills, and you're afraid you're never gonna get another job. So I wanna acknowledge that and like give yourself permission to feel that, and then recognize that actually the majority of people actually go on to be employed. But I followed my instinct. I say to the extent that there is a through line in my career, it was looking for places in the system that seemed to be sort of what I would call nexuses of energy, right? Abortion fascinated me. I didn't come from reproductive rights. It fascinated me because it seemed to be this thing that is a medical procedure that statistically affects relatively few people compared to many other issues in the world, that had our whole country wrapped around an axle. So I was like, something's going on here. I don't know. I want to learn more what it's about. And it turns out, read the book, it's about a lot. It's really about a white, patriarchal, fundamentalist minority wanting to impose their will economically, socially, and politically on everyone else. So, spoiler, but do read the book, because it's a bit more complicated than that. But, so I think, we all got, like I said, I waited tables for a while, but be curious. I applied for so many jobs, and I always went to interviews if I was interested. I was like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Although I literally never thought I would get the NARAL job. I just thought, I'm going to have a really interesting conversation with a group of people who know more about something than I do. So don't make everything the highest stakes, because that's going to make you freeze up. Actually, treat everything as a information seeking endeavor. Maybe that's going to be the right thing, but if it's not, I'm going to learn something and meet some interesting people and move on. One more. You're it. Make it good.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kwabena. Thank you so much for everything that you've said so far. I wanted to ask about the intersection between you as an activist and you as a mother, and I wanted to specifically ask you about how you let your kids continue to explore and be curious while also modeling an anti-authoritarian hope for the future.
Such an excellent question, and I talk about learning every day. I'm learning from my kids every single day. I do actually believe as a parent that I have a higher level of responsibility, especially when they were younger. It's like, what I tell them all the time is my job is to keep them safe and healthy, and support them finding their purpose and their way in life. And I'm going to give them a lot of latitude within that. I also sort of feel like, not everyone, but I wasn't raised in a way that inspired a tremendous amount of curiosity. And I wasn't raised in a way where we talked about values, and they were implied. My parents are great people. I love them dearly. They were implied, but there wasn't a lot of conversation about, I never heard about abortion until someone told me it was murder, and then I went home and was like, what's abortion? And my parents are pro-choice, I find that progressives, because it's kind of complicated and it's not as cogent a theory as on the right, we find ourselves reacting when our kids hear right-wing narratives rather than being proactive. So, my 5-year-old could tell you that abortion would mean you had to make a decision about whether you wanted to have a baby or not, and if you didn't, the doctor, it was a very simple narrative, but I try and experiment with that. I'm not doing everything right, and whatever I do, it's part of their evolution to rebel against me, so I just also accept that. But I do really try and teach them the world's a complex place, and they should be really curious about it. This is an activist thing, but it's also a life philosophy thing. And I don't know, I'm kind of biased, but So far, I think they're pretty cool kids. I forgot to say the one thing I wanted to say, so I'm going to close on it. I do a tremendous amount of work with technology, and I know you guys are probably embroiled, as everyone is, in the conversation about AI. And we talked a little bit about the downsides of tech determinism, as I call it, like being able to just plug something in and like get the answer, although sometimes that's helpful. And these large language models are built on very complex systems, right, with tremendous inputs, and they have embedded biases, and we need to work to help shape that. But the one thing I say, because I think it's really, really important, do you know what the one thing we have that the machines don't have? Curiosity. They have no ability to be curious. And that's inherently what makes us human. It's what inherently will allow us to thrive and survive if we lean into it. So I will leave you with that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being such a great audience.